And let's bring in Greg Sheridan, foreign editor at The Australian. Greg, what have you made of the visit so far?
Well, Kieran, it's been a weird visit, really. It's kind of had an element of, panda diplomacy. There's been no substance to it. I thought the Prime Minister really made a complete mess of the Cheng Lei stuff and then was forced to speak about it today. How much better if he'd just spoken about it yesterday and he didn't need to say much more than he said today. But he had to be pushed into it by the opposition and by commentators and so on. He seems to be terrified of upsetting the Chinese. I think the China relationship is a real conundrum from Australia because we get rich out of their trade, there's no doubt about that. But they are a really malevolent strategic actor, acting against our strategic interests in every theatre, the South Pacific, cybercrime, foreign interference, the whole lot. And the instinct of a government to try to have a politically closer relationship with our big trade partner contradicts our strategic interests. And once again, we've described China as a comprehensive strategic partner. Meantime, the officials are advised to use burner phones when they go into a room with Chinese officials because they'll steal their data off their regular phones. So I think the visit just presents the contradiction that China is for Australian policy.
And that contradiction, is that just the reality that we have to live with?
It is, but I don't think our government is doing a particularly good job in explaining the contradiction. So we don't want China in our critical minerals industry, and it's better if we just say that straight up. And when they behave very badly towards our citizens, as they did with Cheng Lei, and they're still holding that writer in shocking conditions as just part of their hostage diplomacy, well, we should be very upfront in defending our own interests. And of course, we want to trade with them, but we ought to have as a national objective diversifying trade away from China. And yet Don Farrell, the Trade Minister, says, let's make 300 billion into 400 billion. But every time we get a chance to diversify to another nation like India, we seem to make a mess of it. And of course, as I've often said to you, Kieran, we're doing nothing in our own interests in defence policy. And so an Australian government is either forced to condemn China when it attacks our troops on the high seas, or it's sucking up to China in a way that suggests there are no problems whatsoever. I think the Prime Minister gets his tone consistently wrong. He seems to have stage fright and to be scared of saying anything in the presence of a Chinese leader, which could be regarded as less than effusive praise. But then the Chinese leader goes home and the Defence Minister has got to say, well, we need nuclear submarines to protect us against China. And you can't have those two messages unreconciled.